right, take care.
All
And
right. Well, Emma,
end.
before we wrap up tonight, I don't know if this is an entirely fair question to challenge you with, but I really would appreciate your insight on how we as a society can try to find some sort of middle path between like supporting men who are struggling with this type of loneliness and these like very challenging expectations, and then also calling out like the possessive and entitled thinking that tends to get grouped into all of this. What can we as a culture be doing better?
Yeah, and I mean it's such a tricky line to try and understand, and like most like everything in, you know, just social life at the moment, it feels like everything has to be very divisive, that you have to stand on
Mhm.
one side or another, and I think that kind of thinking is part of the problem. I do think that I mean, there's a lot of kind of historical stuff that is interesting, kind of that moves alongside, this kind of red pill, or even outside of the red pill, just kind of men and young men feeling left behind. Things like it's hard for us to analyze. I mean, it's hard to analyze happiness in general, but it's hard for us to analyze, especially how men are feeling, because historically men underreport their feelings compared to other people, and so and we build up a culture of you know how socially acceptable it is for men to express their feelings, and that's changing, and that's definitely something that the more you can encourage your friends and your siblings and whoever to express their feelings openly, the better this will be. Outside of that, it's very tricky, because you have to especially I would say it's most important to call out when it is in what's the word I'm looking for, in some almost like a some sort of hierarchical system. If it's something that, if you experience this kind of red pill misogyny in the office, or you hear it in parliament or something like that, it's very important to then tackle that, because that's a trickle down effect, right?
Sure.
That's how it infects the the lower ranks, so to speak. um but and it's really hard not to do, because some of the content can be horrible, and a lot of the time you just want to be completely furious.
Mhm.
But by trying to remember that, yes, a lot of the behavior is performative, a lot of people are just young and sad and lonely, and just trying to make a space for people to be sad and to be
Mm.
able to express themselves, I think can help. Again, it's so tricky, and I've talked to a lot of people who just say, "I just don't have anyone I can talk to in my life nearby." And there's a lot of kind of things. There's forums and places. I think there's a lot of resources you can use and you should use that are not specific to an ideology, if you see what I mean. Like, if you use a generic kind of venting, chatting thing, like you're on Discord or you're on something like Seven Cups, I think that is better than going to Forum for Men Who Are Sad
Sure.
.incel.co, where everyone is just reinforcing their own sadness. If you go to somewhere broader where you're open to talk about your feelings, you're more likely to get different perspectives, if that kind of makes sense.
Again, just that surrounding yourself with a diversity of people, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, this is maybe not 1,000% universally true, but if you are spending a huge amount of your time only around your same gender or even your same race, let alone your same ideology, you're getting yourself in trouble.
Mhm.
You're in an echo chamber. And you're not going to learn something new if you don't
Mhm.
expose yourself to something new.
So ultimately, where do you recommend people go for healing?
Well, I mean, it is tricky, and it's not there's no I can't recommend friends.com where you magically make the perfect friend group, unfortunately. I wish I had that power. But just try open it, because a lot of people are so afraid to open up, and you can later discover that actually it was safe to do that all along. It's safe to open up to a friend. just try trusting a little bit of your feelings in the people around you. And then of course, I'm always on freaking Twitch and Discord and whatever. There are so many online spaces, places for you specifically to vent. There's places for you to meet other people who are interested in Dungeons and Dragons we talked about earlier. Like
Hmm.
there's a lot of communities that can just boost you up by making you feel just valued and like a friend. And then something that I know is a bit more problematic depending on where you live, especially if you're in the US with the complicated as heck medical system. Um, but professional help is always great because it is completely impartial and you don't have to worry about somebody in your life knowing you and judging you. But I know that that's not easy for everyone to access.
Fair to say.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, and how about some other resources that are easier for people to access? Can you think of any books, podcasts, YouTubers, anything like that that people might find useful?
I mean, if you want to kind of learn more about that sort of red pill side of things, and I think because, and it's interesting that the skeptic community kind of came up earlier. I was talking to Aaron Ra a while ago about how that went off, and a portion of that drifted off into sort of anti-feminist stuff, and what a shame
Mm-hmm.
that is.
Yeah.
Um, but a lot of the people who get into the kind of red pill ideology do so because they have a sort of skeptical mindset and they're interested in kind of debunking things. And I think that debunking the red pill is a really interesting way to kind of get out of that mindset. So there's a book called Men Who Hate Women by Laura Bates that is really, really good and interesting. It's like 13 hours on an audiobook. Um, there's a podcast just called Incel. It's by Crawl Space. I can't remember who. It's an investigative journalist. I can't remember specifically who it is. But that is a very interesting and kind of slightly more humanizing take because she talks to people who identify as incel and learns from them, and you get to see that sort of humanizing side alongside the kind of the hatred and the backlash that she personally experiences. And then honestly, if you whack debunking the red pill into YouTube, you'll get a lot of really interesting resources. You have to be a little bit careful because it's so complicated. There is also some people who debunk the red pill are debunking the red pill to promote the black pill, which is actually just a more
Excuse
extreme
me.
version of the conspiracy.
Right. Sure. Yeah.
So be a little bit
Of
careful with your
course.
searches, but yeah, there's so much interesting stuff online. Kind of you can find from like a factual skeptic perspective if that kind of appeals to you, because I think it does a lot of people.